He's only 22, so there's
We gather here today in the Shtiebel house of mourning, with children, grandchildren, and dear friends, to remember a remarkable life. A long life, a beautiful life. In Jewish tradition, the Shiva is a time when we honor the departed, surrounded by loved ones and with care, understanding and presence. It's a time to acknowledge the pain of loss and the emptiness it brings, but also a time to celebrate the lives that were lived and the legacies that continue. As we continue, as a community, I should say, we play a vital role in this healing process. Our presence here is a testament to the bonds we share, the love that connects us, and the commitment we have to one another. We're here to listen, to comfort, and to provide strength in these difficult times. Let us open our hearts and our minds, allowing ourselves to be fully present for this family. May our words and our actions bring comfort and peace, helping to ease the burden of sorrow. May this time of reflection and remembrance bring us closer, and may we leave this gathering with a renewed sense of compassion and unity. We're on the foot of page 4 in our book of remembrance. A little earlier today, I had the privilege to stand with Ruth's beloved family next to her beloved heart and say some final words of farewell and remembrance. There was laughter, there were tears, but most of all there was a deep sense of gratitude and appreciation for a beautiful life that changed and shaped the life of so many. At graveside, I offered a number of dedications from our tradition. One of them here can be found on page 5. I feel it's an apt descriptor of Ruthie Howard. Our rabbis taught that there are 3 crowns: the crown of Torah, the crown of priesthood, and the crown of royalty. But they emphasize that a crown of a good name exceeds them all. In the book of Kohelet, we are taught that a good name is to be treasured above precious oil. Wealth, health, even life pass away, but a good name lives forever. It is in this view that the Talmud teaches that monuments need not be erected for the righteous, for their deeds or their memorials. They will be remembered and revered for the kindness they have shown, for the love they have given. They are shining examples of what it means to be a mensch. And Ruth was just that, a shining example of what it is to be a mensch. We're going to have an opportunity this evening to hear some stories, session anecdotes, really celebrate a remarkable life. But to get there, we're going to take a few moments to offer the evening prayers, which begin on page 8. I invite you to rise. See that we continue with the evening prayer. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher b'maro ma'ariv barabim, v'chokma botav sh'alim, v'yifameh משנה עתים ומחלק את הזמנים ומסדר את הכוכבים, ושמרתיהם פרקיע כבשמם. בורא יום ולילה, גולה אור מפני חושך וחושך מפני אור. ומבדיל יום ובין לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב.
אהבת עולם בית ישראל עמך אתה, תורה ומצוות חוקים ומשפטים אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו ושופטנו ולכוננו נשיח בחוקיך ונצמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ובהם נגד יומם ולילה. אהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לבבך ודיברת בם בשבתך ובביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאמות ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל גם אתה עליהם, תעשו להם ציצית על כנפי ביתיהם נתתם ונתנו על ציצית הכנף ותותכלת, והיה לכם לציצית וראיתם אותו, וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם, ולא תבטלו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם אשר אתם זונים אחריהם, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
As we move to page 12 and to a prayer of reconciliation as well as redemption, I am reminded of the fact that when I sat just a few days ago with Karen and with Julie and with Rodney and spoke about Ruth and her life and the lessons she instilled, somehow we kept going back to the holidays, to the trips, to connecting with nature and connecting with this incredible land that we're privileged to live in. She much loves to explore and that sense of adventure to her children and her grandchildren too. As we lay her to rest today, the sun came out in the most beautiful of settings. Birds were literally singing with us. She always felt grounded. She always felt connected. And so it's somewhat fitting that as we honor her through our 4,000-year-old tradition, we also connect her to a land and to a people that are much older. We're on page 12.
Wala Moses yan wala yepun narabura fera yumanaya narabura fera Narabura fera imana, bura fera imana, bura fera imana yana. Mi chamocha ba'alim Adonai, mi kamocha neda, ba'kodesh norate lo sefer. Baruch atah Adonai, Kol Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai, Kol Yisrael.
As we make our way through the evening prayers on the top of page 13, we arrive at the Shtiebel. The Shtiebel is one of my favorite prayers in tradition because it's not so complicated. It's easy to understand. It's a pretty basic and universal concept. We want the ability to be able to lie our heads down at night to rest. And we want the privilege, the good fortune, to be able to rise up the next day renewed. Not a Jewish prayer, it's a pretty human prayer. And in the midst of the prayer, just next to the indent, there is an expression that we ask that we find shelter. We want that shelter for ourselves, but tonight particularly, we want that shelter and that comfort for Ruth.
Ushmot zetenu boenu lechayinu uleshalom me'ata ve'ad olam me'ata ve'ad olam me'ata ve'ad
And so as we turn to page 14, we arrive with the Amidah. The Amidah, or the Tefillah as it's headed in our evening prayer book, is the standing prayer. It's a series of 18, sometimes 19 prayers of acknowledgement and appreciation. It's a prayer that is traditionally offered not once but 3 times a day, and allows us to live Jewishly, which is the way Ruth lived. Not necessarily religiously, but Jewishly. Because if we have 3 times 18 prayers that allow us to say thank you, we move through life with what has been described as an attitude of gratitude. And that is certainly the way that Ruth lived every single minute of her life. We're going to arise in a moment for the Amidah. Tammy will call us to prayer with the opening words on page 14, and then I'll invite you to continue in your own pace or indeed in your own way. You might want to offer the traditional words, the translation, some of the reflections in the grey boxes, or just use it as an opportunity for a few moments of personal thought. We'll rejoin each other on the foot of page 25. Please be seated. Before we turn to page 26 and prayers for the house of mourning. For the last almost 8 months, we've inserted an additional prayer into our offerings every time we've gathered, whether it be small or large gatherings, whether it be moments of celebration, or whether it be moments of remembrance like this. The words are not found in your prayer book, they are on the wall behind us over there. Are words of hope for those who live in captivity. They are not new words, they are not our words. In fact, they are words that were first penned in the Masorvitri in the 11th century, at a time where Jewish communities of Europe found themselves too frequently held captive by their neighbors. They weren't able to live the way they wanted to live, to express the freedoms they wanted to express, or to have any real hope of meaningful relationships with their neighbors. But each time someone went missing, they would offer these words that speak to us through the centuries and call out to us now. Our brothers, all the house of Israel, all who are in distress and captivity, standing between the sea and the dry land. May the Eternal One of Mercy have compassion upon them and bring them out of distress to relief. From darkness to light, from subjugation to redemption, now, swiftly, and in our time. And so we turn to the prayers that bring us together tonight. Prayers of remembrance, prayers of celebration, words of tradition. We begin first with the 23rd Psalm.
Nafshi eshovet ישובר ינחני במעגלי צדק ינחני במעגלי צדק למען שמו.
God is my shepherd, I shall not want. You make me lie down in green pastures. You lead me beside still waters. You restore my soul. You set me in circles of righteousness for the sake of your name. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and staff, they comfort me. You spread a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. When trying to frame an appropriate celebration of a life of 94 years, I found myself listening really hard. I've had the privilege to know Ruth on and off for much of the last 20 years. But I knew her as a mother and as a grandmother. It's only in recent weeks, recent days, that I've had the privilege to hear stories of her youth, the challenges of her upbringing, the spirit of adventure that pulled her away to go and travel Europe way before anyone knew what gap year was. A love for family that brought her home. A curiosity and an unsettledness that meant that once she got home, she moved from relationship to relationship. And then that movement suddenly stopped when she settled down with God. And Poch, this extraordinary free spirit, was finally grounded. And once grounded, she set about throwing her roots deep down and looking to connect herself, her children, their friends, their community in any and every way that she could. She was also a youth worker way before anyone knew that youth needed work. Youth engagement and youth empowerment were things that she wanted to ensure that others had, perhaps because she didn't feel she had them when she was younger. She was literally the surrogate mother to the whole of Mount Lakewood. And each of her children spoke about how many times people would come into their home, say hi to them, and then sit down with their mother and have a good chat. These stories are important because the last few months, years of decline and struggle certainly do not define Ruth Howell. She was an incredibly beautiful, bright light that is almost impossible to define. Born on the 6th of September 1929, left us Monday, 20th of May 2024, 94 years. 94 years lived fully. 94 years impacting this world in an extraordinarily positive way. Don't misunderstand. I know her life was complicated. I know, and I heard her children describe the struggle she faced at various stages in her life. I understand that she lived the last years with chronic pain and discomfort. But I know something far more important than all of that. I know that she never complained about it. She never let it define who she was, and she never let it change the relationship she had with those around her. Earlier today, I chose two very different readings to remember her. The one is modern poetry, written by David Arkins. The other is the last 29 verses of the book of Proverbs. Modern poetry, biblical prose. These words are better than mine and epitomize everything that brings every single one of us here today. First, the words of David Arkins. We can shed a tear that she's gone. We can smile because she has lived. You can close your eyes and pray that she will come back. Or you can open your eyes and see all that she has left. Your heart can be empty because you can't see her, or it can be full of the love that you share. You can turn your back on tomorrow and live for yesterday, or you can be happy for tomorrow because of yesterday. You can remember her and only that she is gone, or you can cherish her memory and let it live on. You can cry and close your mind, be empty and turn your back, or you can do what she would want. Open your eyes, love, and go on. And smile. Eshachayil mi yimtza, a woman of valor who can find. She is more precious than fine pearls. No treasure can match her. She saw her work as rewarding. Her candle burned on into the night. She reached out to those in need and extended her hand to the less fortunate. She was clothed in strength and dignity. She faced the future eagerly. She spoke with wisdom. The law of kindness was on her lips. Her children and grandchildren rise up and bless her. Her husband, he praised her sometimes. Many daughters of Israel have done valiantly. But she exceeded them all. I'd like to invite her children to offer a few words of remembrance, if they wish.
So I just want to say thank you to everyone so much for coming tonight, because just every person that I see in the room is either here for me or Rodney or Karen and her grandchildren. But we all had some connection with Ruth, and we really appreciate you being here. And I'd just like to also thank Gersh for today. It's been so comforting for me and for us, I think, as a family, to have Gersh. I met Gersh a long time ago when I first moved to Hong Kong, and Gersh came as a worker, a youth shliach to Hong Kong. He was 20 years old, he reminded me. And he wasn't married yet. He's got a wife and 2 children now. And I'm so proud of you and your journey. And this is Gersh's creation, his Shtiebel, and it's his vision. And you are a visionary. And you know I don't agree with everything, but I believe in your vision. I believe in your vision. And he's, you know, he sees that big picture, and it's a beautiful space that he's created here for his work. Thank you, Gersh. So I apologise, my speech is a bit long and I'll try and cut it down if it's going on too long. But I just also, before my cousin Deborah has to leave to go back to Sydney, thank you for coming, Deborah. So she is the daughter of Egon and Judy, who was my father's cousin. We really appreciate you coming down. A few years ago, I came into Ruth's apartment at Classic. She was resting with her eyes closed in her big blue recliner. And I remember thinking one day she would be sleeping forever. I tried to imagine what that would feel like, but of course you never can until that day arrives. Today, I feel like a ship without a lighthouse ahead to guide me home. It's impossible for me to really grasp that my mum is gone, that the vibrant, passionate energy she had is no longer here. I cannot really imagine my life without her actually, and the coming days and weeks will be challenging. I know I'll cry when I'm in places we visited together and remember that we can't share a meal or a coffee together, or when I make a mental note that I need to buy things for her room and that she's not in her room anymore, or when I long to see her smile and her face is hidden from me now. But Ruth wouldn't want me or any of us to be sad for too long. And I'm reminded that some people have not had the opportunity to have their parent around for so long. And I am very, very grateful for that opportunity that I had to have Ruth in my older years and her older years. It's true that I gave up a large chunk of my life to sort of look after Ruth, but that relationship wasn't a one-way street. I believe I gained much more than I gave, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. The opportunity to share and to give back to Ruth's older years, to learn from her and to be in the presence of the wise and expansive soul that she was a gift to me. Ruth was unselfish and undemanding. It was easy to care for her in that sense. And on the practical side, I knew how vulnerable she was, and that every small act of assistance was to brighten her day, gave her dignity. And I wanted to make sure that people around her knew that despite her level of incapacitation, she was still highly alert and she was determined to enjoy her life, however hard it was. I think I'll always want one more with Ruthie. One more coffee, one more visit to the park or the beach, one more holding her hand in a taxi as we went to the shops or the mall, one more looking at the beautiful colours of nature and the vibrant clothes in the shops which she wore so beautifully and elegantly. One more chat about what was going on in my life, about school, people she knew, Josh. One more chat where she laughed at my cat Patrick's antics, or looking at photos of the old days, reading her book or playing Scrabble. One more chat with the beautiful ladies at Arcare. One more outing into the sunshine, where I would turn off her light in her room and say, "Goodbye, room." And I made Ruthie say the words, "Goodbye, room," but sometimes she mixed it up and said, "Goodbye, Ruth." And then I said, no, not goodbye, Ruth. A few weeks ago, I wrote a card to Ruth. My card said, "Dear Ruth, you are my hero. You try to smile through each day, even though being old is hard. You always listen with compassion to others. You're still curious about the world. You find joy in small things. You're open-minded. and you don't judge others. You nod your head with understanding. You always offer to help me, and you see good in everyone. Thanks for being my hero. But my relationship was also real with Ruth. I didn't pretend when I was tired, or when something was on my mind. Sometimes at the end of my visit, I would say, would you like to thank you for my scintillating company? And we would laugh, knowing that that day I didn't have much to give. In Ruthie's last years, as her health declined, she showed the kind of guts and courage that I think was impossible not to be inspired by. Her capacity to remain optimistic despite her diminishing quality of life was remarkable. As she slowly accepted the painful reality of her physical limitations, she simply refused to give up on life. She was determined to keep fighting for another day because she genuinely loved life. I never heard her complain, though she hated being in a wheelchair and sometimes was so frustrated that she tried to climb out of it. She endured pain with dignity and grace and showed gratitude towards her carers. She maintained her elegant and beautiful appearance and continued to experience joy and a childlike sense of wonder and surprise. She loved to laugh, and in her halting communication blurted out funny things right to the end when she could only whisper. At one point, recently, she popped her head up in bed and whispered the word whiskey. Upon which I got in my car, left art care and returned with a small bottle of Red Label. Her eyes lit up, I filled the glass with ice and we clinked together. I was proud of her, and I can't imagine many people enduring what Ruth did with such grace and bravery. When I was reading Ruth's autobiography, I was struck by the same determination and sheer willpower that pushed her to continually evolve. But these were struggles of a different kind. While Ruth presented to the world as self-assured, and although she somewhat relaxed when she married and had a family, inside she was plagued with feelings of self-doubt and insecurity and a lack of confidence. And yet, despite her lack of belief in herself, she constantly pushed herself to learn. Whether it was her various artistic endeavours, such as macrame and enamelling, selling World Book encyclopedias with Jan Jones, which was door-to-door selling, so she was terrified every time she had to knock on a door and ask people if they wanted to buy an encyclopedia.
The real terror was what would happen if somebody said, yes, please come in and tell us about it. That was the real terror.
Learning numerology or tarot or creating employment programs for disadvantaged youth. She constantly persevered and pushed herself into uncomfortable situations to develop a greater understanding of herself and others. As most people know, Ruth was adopted when she was 18 months old. Her parents, Maya and Evelyn Silverman, were kind, but they probably found it difficult to understand the free-spirited and creative person Ruth was. Unlike the Silverman clan, Ruth was tall, she had big feet and imagined herself on a stage. Being an only child was lonely, and she entertained herself by singing, dancing and acting in front of the mirror with a broomstick, making up characters. She dreamed of faraway places and she was curious to explore the world. Ruth described herself as willful, sometimes moody, stubborn and rebellious as a child. And growing as a teen, she understood in hindsight that it must have been difficult for her poor parents to understand her. Ruth was highly sensitive to criticism, and she didn't make friends at school, and she was quite lonely. In later life, she was sometimes too trusting, which led to funny incidents, but on the more serious side, it meant that she didn't understand when people sometimes didn't have her best interests at heart. When Ruth was 16, Maya, her father, told her that she was adopted, and for Ruth, many things fell into place about why she felt different, and this was the beginning of her quest to find her real family. She was a good writer at school, but was terrible at maths, and like most girls of that year, left school at year 10 to become a secretary. She began to find confidence and enjoy her social life when she got into the workforce. By her own admission, she was a little eccentric. She lived on coffee and cigarettes and loved socialising and making new friends. She worked for advertising companies and then for Channel 9 in Melbourne and Sydney. She loved the creativity of those roles and freedom to be a little crazy. Ruth had a strong sense of equality, and in her book she remembers how she was asked to go up to Frank Packer's office one day to take notes for him. She didn't put up with rudeness, and while the other employees were shocked that she had spoken to him as an equal, she maintained that all people deserve respect and that he would be treated in the same way as anybody else for her. In those days when discrimination was normalised, she also tells the story of how at one point she was asked whether it bothered her to work with an Indian man, and Ruth had no idea what they were talking about because she simply did not understand that kind of prejudice. In her 20s, Ruth travelled to Europe, and it was there she met Laura Moss. They apparently couldn't stand each other to begin with, but once they realised they shared a wacky sense of humour, they became firm friends. Ruth tells many funny stories in the book about how the more experienced and savvy Laura rescued Ruth, who was terribly naive and innocent, from various situations, because Ruth had no idea they were potentially dangerous or risky. Laura introduced Ruth to her family and friends back in Melbourne, and Laura, Stan, Ruth and John became an inseparable foursome. As Tanya noted in her words to Laura recently, the friendship groups of families, who were Mosses, Howards, Bonds, Joneses, Strausses and Bensons and Ungers, were a ready-made family, and we enjoyed years of friendship, parties, family occasions, dinners and celebrations. Ruth found Laura's unexpected passing this year very hard, and she mourned her deeply. Ruth's courtship with my dad was very romantic and a beautiful time for her. She truly found her knight in shining armour in my dad, and her wedding was a very, very happy day. Ruth and John were united in their devotion to us, kids. My dad was hardworking, and the most enjoyable times were on the holidays as a family. My parents had a shared love of adventure and nothing more. They loved nothing more than going bush, getting away from the city for weekends and holidays. Getaways around Australia. My dad had a locum in New Guinea. We went up there for a bit. And John was also stationed in Charleville with the Royal Flight and Doctor Service. My mum's sense of fun came out in our younger years. She invented silly games and activities which she loved joining in on. In our teenage years, Ruth's empathy was at the forefront of her open and welcoming approach to our friends, and she became a mentor and a guiding light for many of them. Her youthful spirit and love of people encouraged our friends to feel comfortable and to share their feelings, thoughts and ideas with Ruth, as they sometimes couldn't share those with their own family. She was a confidant and mentor to many, providing guidance, wisdom and empathy. She was an excellent listener, and she listened without judgment or criticism. Ruth's acceptance helped so many who needed a willing ear and a kind word. She genuinely enjoyed young people's company. It was these qualities who drew Ruth to others and which prompted young people and people of all different age groups to befriend Ruth. Our house was open, with many kids coming and going, people chatting to Ruth. She helped navigate their worries and fears. Sunday night dinners were a regular at our house, and there were many people around the dinner table who popped in or who were invited. My parents loved entertaining. My mum was flamboyant, the hostess with the mostess. She loved music and dancing. She was a great cook and enjoyed being the life of the party. My dad had taught her to drink whiskey, brandy and wine, and the bar was always open with Len serving everyone's favourite drink. Ruth's desire to nurture young people took a professional turn when she started writing letters to the local paper about youth unemployment in the 1980s. When Ruth read about employers who were complaining about a lack of people ready for jobs, she suggests they create an employment training centre. Eventually, they asked Ruth to initiate the project as they believed she had the skills to do it. This was the beginning of a 20-year career where she designed from scratch programs for underprivileged youth. What started out as job skills awareness, however, quickly turned into programs for building self-esteem and self-worth. As Ruth quickly realised to her horror that many of the teens she was working with felt so low about themselves and had such fragmented home situations that they had no hope of ever being able to get work without first building their confidence. Ruth pioneered these programs well before any government assistance or programs existed, but it was really her acceptance, her open-mindedness and respect for people, regardless of their education or their circumstances, that was groundbreaking. She established her own business called Life Directions and was given an award on Australia Day honouring her contribution. One of the most wonderful things that happened to Ruth in her 60s was she found her birth family. It's a long and interesting story about how that came about, but she did finally feel a sense of completion about finding her Leahy family. She was so appreciative of her half-sister Barbara's welcoming and warm embrace. It was a great comfort, a sense of relief to know that at least she knew something about her real mother and the family that she was biologically connected to. Ruth had a profound sense of awe in nature. She loved being in the elements and was so happy when she was in the fresh air and sunshine. She would often throw her hands in the air when she was in her wheelchair and put her face up to the sky, showing her pleasure in going out, whether it was down to the beach or the park. She loved animals, and when she was a young child, she recalls she tried to avoid walking on the concrete so that she could avoid killing the animals. She couldn't bear to see animals suffer. Ruth loved it when people brought dogs to visit her at our care. And Mozart, our Golden Labrador, and Tara were companions for Ruthie in the classic. Ruth had a deep understanding that all life is connected: animals, birds, plants, flowers, rivers and oceans, and people. And I think it was that gave her such an insightful understanding. I would like to say thank you to Ruth's carers who are here: Tess, Jackie and Marlene, who all showed the greatest kindness in caring for Ruth, helping to give her quality of life when we were working. Ananda, who cared for Ruth week in, week out for 8 years, giving Ruthie beautiful outings and so much kindness. Your favourite place was the North Road Cafe, where she could walk along the beach, and she loved those outings. I depended on you when I was in Hong Kong. You have not only been Ruth's friend, but you became my friend as well. Thank you to Baron and Joe. You have been part of our family for so long, we hardly remember what it was like before you came into our lives. And I'd just also like to thank Len Weller, because Len kept the faith with Ruthie and just visited her, keeping loyal to our family. Josh, I want to thank you for all the love you showed Ruthie. I always saw a very soft and gentle side of you when you were with her, and Ruthie loved you. Ruth was there when you were born in Hong Kong, and she knitted you a beautiful blue hat and a jumper. She also wrote poems for your birthday and all the grandchildren. We had beautiful trips together, down to Rye, up to the Gold Coast, country Victoria, and Ruth's last overseas trip to Japan. As you got older, you made sure to visit her, and you never begrudged the time I'd spent with Ruth. She always asked about you, and her eyes lit up when you walked into the room. She was very proud of your achievements and the person you're becoming. Last week in the late afternoon, I went on one of my walks to the park near my house. The air was crisp, and as I rounded the corner, I saw the most beautiful autumn tree. The sun was shining through the gold and red star-shaped leaves, and the branches moved softly against the sky. I immediately took a photo so I could show Ruth. When she looked at it, she did a quick intake of breath, awed by its beauty. Ruthie, you will always be my starshine. You are my friend, my confidant, and my hero. I loved being there for you. I will miss you.
Mourning is the price we pay for having the courage to love others. Even in grief, we know that the wonder of human life is too complex and too magnificent to be memorialized in endless pain. The gifts of the Spirit that Ruth gave us cannot be measured or weighed, nor can they be lost or even tarnished by time. Even in this dark hour, we know that some of her light and some of her warmth will always be with us, bringing comfort and courage, and in the fullness of time, healing and peace. I invite you to rise from the memorial. Remain standing for a brief moment as we turn to our closing prayers. Psalm Tefillah on page 31 and then Kaddish on page 30. You know, when we founded, and thank you, Julie, for the plug, but when we founded the Shtiebel a year ago, we committed to try and do something old, but do it in a new way. In some of the cases, we chose to let go of liturgy that we just didn't feel resonated with the sensibility of the 21st century. And in other places, we took things long forgotten, like that beautiful prayer, Achenu, we looked to bring it back into life. Its voice now speaking to us throughout the centuries. One of the changes we made, I believe, is something that Ruth, you would have really loved. Tammy and I struggled with the Aleinu prayer. It had a bit of that "we better than you, now stuff that she didn't like. She really didn't like it. And so we felt that we would better introduce it not with the words of the rabbis of the 16th century, the words of a child of the 20th century. Little did we know a year ago how poignant these words would remain. In spite of everything, my Anne Frank has found in Mikrat Shabbat. It really is a wonder that I haven't got all of my ideals, because they seem so absurd and impossible to carry out. Yet, I keep them, because in spite of everything, I still believe that people are really good at heart. I simply cannot build my hopes on a foundation of confusion, misery, and death. I see the world gradually being turned into a wilderness. I hear the approaching thunder. I can feel the suffering of millions, and yet if I look up into the heavens, I think it will all come out right one of these days. That this cruelty will end, and that peace and tranquility will return again. In the meantime, I must hold on to my ideals. For perhaps the day will come, Bayom Hahu, the day will come when I shall be able to carry them out. In the meantime, we should hold on to her ideals, because perhaps the day will come when we will be able to carry them out. Kadisha Tom on page 30. Friends, on behalf of Julie, Rodney, and Karen, I want to thank you all for being here this evening. Ruth wouldn't want to run away, which is why they've ensured that there is wine, brandy, and scotch. Because that's what she would have wanted. And Jen, please drink responsibly. And there is also plenty of food. Really, it's an invitation. If you don't have somewhere to be, then please stay and be here and share stories and share love. Wish you all a long life. Thank you.